Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Chilluminati podcast, episode 300.
Wow.
As always, I am one of your hosts, Mike Martin, joined today by my other two hosts, the American Rosso of LA, Jesse and Alex. Hello, boys.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
Who are American Rosso?
American Rosso are an Australian comedian duo that was active from 96 to 09. They basically did stand-up comedy together. And then as all coming, like up and coming comedians who get a bit of fame do, they got their own little TV show, a couple radio shows, and that was the end of it. They got a couple DVD specials. They got a book out of it. That's it. Nothing's,
All
they're
right.
they're like the Us of their genre.
There's something really funny about this that I know.
Yeah.
Pretty successful, not like A tier.
I know someone in Australia is going to correct us and be like,
Happy 300.
they were quite famous, and we'll probably get a message from them and be like,
Listen, I'm
Who are you?
comparing them within their own pool of like what successes in Hollywood.
right. They're the Us of talented people.
Yeah, exactly.
Talented Australian people.
Understood.
And like we made it pretty far with no talent, and that's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alex, did that hurt? Yeah, is this gonna be the last episode where I do a duo?
No, I don't think
300,
so.
It's a nice
Is that the big thing you had planned? Is that you're like,
No,
and
I didn't
I'm
have
done
anything big.
with
That
duos.
No, that was not what I had planned for the
Now
big
it's
thing.
trio.
Yeah, now it's famous
Because it's
animal.
300 plus. Bad. Yeah.
No. It is. I can't believe we've been doing this for 300 episodes. It's just a crazy number. I don't think I've
Genuinely, candidly, it completely snuck up on us. And it is an honor to be around for so long, but it's also funny.
Yeah.
But it's also fun.
I was thinking like I've done 300 episodes of like a Binding of Isaac gaming series on my YouTube channel, but I was also putting out like one a day. This is 300 episodes, but one a week, which is impressive because it's like a much longer run.
Yeah, this is still. I'm so old and doing this for a long time that this isn't the longest show that I've been on. And actually,
for me, for sure.
Yeah, and Jesse and I have another show we've been doing even longer than this show.
That's true.
Which is like another thing that's wild.
That show is the reason you two are on this show in the first place.
Yeah, and even that show isn't as old as my other show that's even older. We're just all old. It's good to be 300 years old.
Yeah, we're here.
So what did you cook up for the big 300?
This is the end of the episode, actually. You can find out at patreon.com/ChilluminatiPod where the actual episode is going to go live. This is just going to be...
Why would you say that?
This is going to be an hour.
Now it's going to be on Reddit, and I'm going to have to read some guy being like, it's not even funny.
This is an hour and a
spent
half.
the first 45 minutes of every episode just doing ad reads. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's what we like. This is going to be an hour and a half.
I got to read that, dude. Don't do that. Don't play games.
Only ad reads.
Listen, these guys aren't people to me. Give me the info.
Okay, so sorry.
Oh my God. I must stress, if we just did an entire episode of just ad reads, that'd be the greatest end of a show ever. Like, you know what? We're done. Here's 4 hours of ad. That would be.
I think you just gave me a great idea for next April Fools.
No.
It'll be like when Rick and Morty does the episode where they don't write it. It'll be famous.
Right.
Our fans will love it.
Well, I was thinking, like, maybe you could do an episode about a topic presented in 2-minute ad read chunks throughout the whole hour episode.
Yeah, I'd be.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Chilluminati ads only.
I would love that. No, there's something special for today's 300th episode, boys. Again, we've been doing this for so long, and I look back at all the things we've done. And one of the earliest, maybe the earliest big series we ever did is also like one that people reference constantly when I see like a Reddit post of a new listener who wants a recommended like bag of episodes to go listen to or series. And it's always Tommy Pitera. Tommy Karate just sits at the very, very, very top.
I get it. Yeah, no, I get it.
It's one of the oldies and goodies, and it has a funny joke in there.
I still remember like being in an Airbnb out here in I think it was at MomoCon or something where I was reading the book. Like I was, instead of like enjoying a little vacation, I was just sitting on the couch with like a YouTube video in the background and just reading through the book. And that was what I was doing. So I figured we haven't really had a sequel to Tommy Pitera. And this has been on my list of people to be doing for a long time. So we got another big boy, chunky multi-parter ahead of us as we are finally going to cover none other than the Iceman himself, Richard Kuklinski.
HBO's favorite serial killer, man.
Yeah, there's so many different documentaries and interviews with him.
The Iceman tapes is like 1 million bazillion episodes. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I think it's HBO.
Of the many sources I've used, listening to those was one of them. But the main book we're going to be using is going to be written by the very same author that wrote my main source book for the Tommy Pitera series, which is Philip Corso's The Iceman Confessions of a Mafia Killer. It's a big chunky book. You can get it out there. It's been out since late 90s, early 2000s. And right at the top, I will say a lot of that book is basically Philip Corso's interview talking to him about all of his crimes. So a lot of what we're getting comes from the mouth of Richard Kuklinski. And as we've talked about on other serial killers and other killers, it's always take what he says with a grain of salt in a lot of his cases. However, the cases that they were able to corroborate with the evidence that they have in what he was saying often line up pretty well. So even if he is, shall we say, maybe embellishing a bit on some of his kills, again, the evidence that we have of some of them show if he was embellishing, it wasn't by much, because a lot of the tools and the way they found the bodies and the way they've died all line up with the kind of horrific things that Richard Kuklinski did. Because much like Tommy Pitera, I believe, and we'll see if you feel like at the end of this, Kuklinski was a serial killer that very much fell into the job made for him, working for the Mafia.
Very Tommy Karate adjacent.
Extremely, and so much so that they very likely crossed paths in a couple of familiar bars, never talking to each other. But I need to go back and listen to the Tommy Pitera, but I have a vague memory of Tommy Pitera talking about how he was in one of those bars where all the families would come together, and he had heard of and knew of Kuklinski, Iceman, had seen him because the dude is enormous and like was just well known as like a killer that all the families used, but never like spoke to him or anything. Like they just kind of like crossed paths once in a bar. But we'll talk about that more later, because this is going to be a big boy. And today is just part one of this guy. Now, do you guys, as I like to ask, do you know anything about this guy? Have you seen the documentaries?
Not even remotely.
Really? Okay,
I think when I was a kid, I might have watched them like on cable and like scared the shit out of myself, but not in a way where I remember the details.
There
I remember his face.
Iceman movie that is just called, I think, The Iceman. It's a crime thriller. Richard Kuklinski is played by Michael Shannon in this.
Oh, I have seen that. I've seen that movie.
I watched a little bit of it and turned it off because it's awful. It is a romanticization of who he was. They present him as almost sympathetic in that movie in a way that he is not in any way,
he's weirdly likable. He's weirdly likable.
Well, they started showing him as like a family man. And yeah, he had a family, but he didn't love them at all. And we'll see that. But the movie is just like a weird propaganda. It's just I don't know. Maybe Hollywood was just trying to make a different movie.
For what purpose?
Just a Hollywood movie. I don't know what the purpose was. It's 2012 was the movie, so it wasn't that long ago.
But he's still a killer in it?
Yes.
Yeah,
he's still a killer.
He's like a mob.
But they
killer.
try to show like a dual life where he was a family man who was traumatized to becoming a killer over time or whatever.
After learning how they got The Godfather made, do you think it was similar in the idea of it's not about the mob. We don't want to upset the mob. It's about family.
Yeah, maybe.
And that's kind of what they did here.
I didn't think the movie was bad, but I didn't know the real story, right? As a movie, it works. It's not like it's not like a poor film.
If I did it the other way around, where I watched the movie first and then did my research instead of doing all my research first and then being like, I maybe should watch this movie, that would have been I probably would have enjoyed it in some way, but because it was immediately clear, this isn't at all who this man is.
It's not even worth watching. Nonfiction. Yeah,
it's not even worth watching for research purposes. So with all that said and done, and our source is kind of out there, let's go ahead and dive into the story of who would eventually become known as the Iceman, Richard Kuklinski himself. Now, Richard Leonard Kuklinski was.
Does anybody call him the Kook?
No, just the Iceman, dude. Come on.
No, and he didn't like, we'll talk
Richard
about
the Kuklinsky? Come on.
Richard the Kuklinsky.
No, you don't call him the first guy who did. That's why it's called the Iceman.
Oh, shit.
He was born on April 11th, 1935, into a home in Jersey City, New Jersey, that could really only be described to me as like a domestic war zone, as many people who are traumatized like this are. Like just complete battlefield of working class trauma in a Polish American household. His father, Stanley Kuklinski, was a Polish immigrant from Warsaw who worked as a brakeman for the Lackawanna Railroad. Physical descriptions of him is like he wasn't super tall, but he was fucking built. He was very strong because he's worked as a railman. He was a brakeman for the railroads back then. Handsome. Some say he resembled Rudolph Valentino, which you can look up, but he's a pretty handsome
Rudy
man
Valentino?
at the time. Yeah. With his hair parted in the center, slicked back tight against his scalp, fashion of that era. Richard's mother as well was Anna McNally. She was an Irish Catholic whose own parents had immigrated from Dublin. And after her father died of a pneumonia and her mother was tragically run over by a truck, she and her two older, it's rough. Her and her two older brothers, Mickey and Sean, ended up in the Sacred Heart Orphanage on Erie and 9th Streets in Jersey City, which I found interesting because I went to a high school that was run by the Brothers of the Sacred Heart.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What? Is it any relation?
It's Sacred Heart. Yeah, it's all Catholic. It's Irish Catholic. It's all, and it's New England too. It's all in New England. This is all.
It's crazy how all these locations you're naming just sound like places in Buffalo, New York too.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, exactly.
It is. At first I was like, hold on. Are we in Buffalo? Wait, this isn't right.
Nope. Jersey City. There, Anna endured a brutal upbringing. The nuns would beat discipline. Nuns were beating them. Physical discipline was everywhere at this time. And before she even reached age 10, she was sexually assaulted by a priest, an experience that really stole a lot of her humanity that would shape how she acted moving forward, becoming a very cold and unfeeling woman from that point on, understandably. And this is where I guess I'll say, like, trigger warning for the entire series. Like, this shit is only bad and gets worse as time goes. So Anna met Stanley at a church-sponsored dance, and 3 months later, in July of 1925, they were married. She was probably trying to escape her past, but Stanley, who obviously looked good on paper, turned out to be jealous, possessive tyrant of a husband who would beat her bloody any opportunity he was angry. He was also a heavy drinker, and when drunk, his temper got worse. He accused Anna of being a tramp and a whore because she hadn't been a virgin on their wedding night, a secret shame that Anna carried because of the sexual abuse. But she never really revealed to him the priest's violations around that time. He ran around with other women, and when he came home, his rage was just unleashed on Anna and eventually their children.
You know, my favorite part about this is to this day, it's still just a treasured bit of hypocrisy that I love seeing.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that this dude is, you weren't a virgin on our wedding night. How dare you? You disgust me. Now I'm going to go around and sleep with other random women. Those women I don't care about, but you're mine. And so how dare you? But those other women, I'm not even worried about that. I don't even care. I don't care what they do.
Don't worry about it.
It's just hilarious to me that is a thing that dudes definitely justify in their brains, and it's what?
Yeah, it's all around that religious as well, the woman must serve the man kind of thing, and that was beaten to her too as a kid, Thank you so much to today's sponsor, Ghost Bed, where they're not going to haunt you in your bedroom, they're just going to haunt your sweaty sleeping habits. Yeah, that makes sense. If you haven't tried Ghost Bed, you need to go check it out right now, especially if you're like me and you are a sweaty boy when you sleep. Their Ghost Bed mattress line has just been redesigned right as of last month in April. They have higher quality materials, a better feel, and will make you sleep longer at night. They have advanced cooling, which is my favorite part because their patented cooling tech and breathable materials keeps you cool all night long. They also have ergonomic zone support layers that relieve pressure and aligns your spine. All you with them gamer spines, you need this, okay? And obviously, GhostBed provides high quality and super comfortable award-winning mattresses crafted in the US and Canada. And did you know that 60% of US adults report being too hot when they're trying to sleep? That's why they design all their products with cooling features so you stay comfortable and asleep all night long. And if you pair any of their mattresses with GhostBed's award-winning adjustable base, you get the ultimate sleep experience. It's really cool to work with a family-owned business who have sleep experts and 20 plus years of experience. They have over 60,000 5-star reviews, and they have a 101 night at-home sleep trial on all mattresses and pillows, with a 20 plus year warranty, which is 2 times the industry standard. If you're not sure which mattress is right for you, you can just head over to GhostBed and take their quick sleep quiz. It's a simple way to match you with your perfect mattress based on how you sleep. So here's your next move. Don't worry, I'll tell you what to do. Head over to ghostbed.com/chill to shop their Memorial Day sale and use code CHILL for an extra 10% off of your order. That's ghostbed.com/chill, promo code CHILL for an extra 10% off your order and the best sleep of your life at the best price, of course. Thank you again to GhostBed for sponsoring today's episode. And Stanley, the father, would beat not only Richard, but his older brother as well. And he would beat them for any perceived infraction. Talking too loud, making eye contact when he didn't want it. Sometimes just simply being there and in the way was enough for him to beat them. And he didn't just use his hands. He had a very particular weapon of choice. A thick black garrison belt that he'd often wrap around his hard-knuckled fist to make the blows heavier. He didn't whip him with the belt. He literally wore it like brass knuckles and then punched the fuck out of him. And Richard went on to say it was like being struck by a 2x4. He was fond of hitting his sons in the head, often knocking them unconscious. And Anna, again, by the way, head trauma, classic serial killer. Mark that on your serial killer.
It's just another
card.
One of these.
Yep.
Yeah.
yeah, at least at the beginning. Like I said, he knocked him out. And Anna, the devout Catholic who lit candles every Sunday, often joined in the abuse. And or at least did nothing to stop it. Oh yeah, she would beat them too. And if she wasn't, she didn't do anything to stop it when it was happening. She literally would crack Richard in the head with frying pans, broom handles, wooden spoons, shoes. And she once even knocked him out cold with a broom handle after he tried to stop her from hitting him for stealing food to feed the family. Yeah, he stole food once when he was a kid. And she just beat him unconscious with a broom handle. Jesus. So, she wasn't great either. You a very godly woman going to church every Sunday.
Oh, dude.
And Richard had an older brother, Florian.
Sorry, what was that?
His older brother, Florian.
Florian's kind of a badass name, admittedly.
Yeah, dope name.
It's very D&D.
I was literally going to say, I bet you'd name a D&D character that.
Yeah, it is a D&D character.
Florian Scrimshaw's me name. Rogue I am. And bored.
Well, maybe like a rogue. Florian was also a pretty frail boy, quiet by nature, never really in good health.
Oh no.
He had a very, according to Richard, a very delicate and timid nature that often made him a target for his father's brutality. If Florian cried, he got hit. If he dirtied his bed, he got hit. And one night, in a fit of drunken rage, Stanley struck Florian on the back of the head. The boy immediately fell to the floor, and then he never got up. No ambulance was even called.
Oh, my God.
Beat his son to death. He was 11 years old when he did that.
Jesus.
And Richard was 5. Stanley made Anna tell family, friends, and authorities that Florian had died by falling down the stairs and striking his head.
Oh my God.
And no one questioned their story. No charges were ever filed.
Dude, what the fuck, man?
It just... it's
what the fuck.
And Richard was witnessing this all while he was 5 years old. His mother told Richard that Florian had been hit by a car and died. A lie that was obviously just like a terrible one to try and cover up the truth. But he saw his brother, the only friend he'd ever known about at that time, lying in a cheap wooden coffin in their living room, surrounded by praying, crying relatives, and couldn't understand why Florian wouldn't wake up. According to Richard, he literally had the thoughts of and said to him, "Wake up, Florian, wake up. Please don't leave me here alone." And it was the first dead body that Richard had ever really seen. And it would be far from the last. But after Florian's death, for about a month, the beatings from Stanley stopped. Maybe out of guilt, or maybe the fleeting fear that he'd actually gone too far with that when killing his son. But that reprieve from his temper was short-lived. And the violence not only returned, but it was even more brutal and even more frequent. And it all fell squarely on Richard Kuklinski. Deep breaths. Any jokes you want to throw in, boys? Lighten the mood a little bit.
Good. I got nothing.
We're just going into page 2 of 16. Like, are we ready to keep going?
They called him Kook, though. Remember?
Yeah. Kuklinski.
You want a joke from Ranger Rick?
Please.
How do baby geese get out of their shells?
How?
They follow exit signs.
When the violence resumed, Stanley seemed to blame
the awkward silences.
Yeah.
When the violence resumed, he said.
Stanley blamed Richard for basically every injustice in his life at that point. Richard was beaten for things no child could obviously control. Obviously, he was traumatized in peeing the bed, so he was beaten for it. If he spoke too softly, beaten for it. Flinching when his father approached, beaten for it. If Richard cried, beaten for it. If he tried to explain himself, beaten for it. There were no rules. It was just random unpredictability.
His dad just constantly beating the shit out of him.
Yep, but never far enough to kill him. At least he learned that lesson, I guess. Stanley ensured that fear became Richard's normal state of existence, and beatings came without warnings. Lectures on manliness were then punctuated by fists to the face. Quite literally, he would call him coward, weakling, all this shit, and then beat the fuck out of him. And it would always be with the leather belt wrapped around his knuckles. The terror got so intense for Richard that he started wetting his pants at the mere sight or sound of his father, which, you guessed it, only led to more beatings. And his mother's response during these episodes was often just to turn her back, face a wall, pray fervently, hopefully God will stop him. That worked last time. And when prayer offered no solace, she would unleash her own violence upon him, striking him with whatever was at hand, like pots, utensils, shoes, and then, in a weird, perverse way, would then tell him to go to church. She'd beat the fuck out of him and be like, you need to go to church. So Richard often went to sleep, bruised, aching, and sometimes so badly welted that he couldn't even go to school for a couple of days. Anna, the religious zeal that she pretended to be, forced Richard into Catholic school, St. Mary's, a place that he came to loathe for its restrictive, what he deemed hypocritical teachings and the brutality of its nuns and priests. He was highly dyslexic as well and struggled very much to keep up with the class. Again, this is in the fucking 40s, 30s and 40s, so good luck with that. And when he used his fingers to follow the lines of text, the nuns would come over and then slap his hands with a metal ruler.
Right.
One day after a nun, I know. And this is, again, and one day, like, a nun did it so badly, his knuckles bled. But then at that point, Richard erupted and he's screaming, calling her a cunt and all these other things, really going nuts at her, which I can understand, being beaten with a ruler all the damn time, just trying to read. He was immediately brought out of class, and dragged out by a really pissed off, apparently very red-faced priest, who then slapped him so hard, his face stung and another welt formed. And then he beat him with a Bible.
What?
So Richard's just the priest beat him with a Bible.
What is it? He's like a fucking character from a fucking book?
Dude,
what the hell, dude?
A lot of just
beat him with a Bible that's a first for me.
Yeah, right? That's a new one.
Fucking insane,
you think he
brother.
got Jesus' message that way?
I'm going to stand by my profound truth that I truly believe that the vast majority of the people who follow the Bible have never once read it. So, I bet he absolutely is yeah. Jesus says, whack him with the Bible. That's what it's here for.
Now, in the interview, too, Richard said after he went home that night, his mother beat him again for misbehaving in school or still breaking the rules. But I just want to kind of at this point, it's important to remember, we say this a lot with serial killers. There are countless people who endure violent homes, who suffer abuse like this, even back then and to this day. And that alone does not forge the kind of monster that Richard very, very quickly became, because there is more to it than just that. And by the age of 10, Richard wasn't just an angry, abused child. He was actively beginning to experiment with cruelty on his own because it was the only thing around him. It was his norm. It was all he really knew. And so, like most early serial killers, his rage found an outlet in the torture of stray animals, devising tormented, sadistic, like just ways to kill them beyond what I think a child should be fucking capable of. Like a couple of the stories that are in the book. One, he captured 2 cats and tied their tails together and then hung them over a clothesline just so he could watch them tear each other apart while they hung up there. He then, on another story, poured gasoline on stray dogs and then lit it just to watch them burn. He threw, he said, a few stray cats down buildings' incinerators, lighting it to enjoy their desperate screams, just to watch them try and scrape and claw their way out.
A fucking song to play in my ears that's good, that drowns out when you go through lists of atrocities like this.
Well, this is the only animal atrocities we'll be covering.
Thank God.
Yeah, and this is all.
Let's get to the people quickly.
Yeah, let's get there quick. And this is at the age of 10. This is the age of 10 years old. And then he also used clubs, pipe hammers.
Cartoonishly evil, like what Bowser would do.
Yeah, and this was coupled with him beating them animals to death with just like tools. Like this isn't just childhood fucking cruelty. This also was calculated, methodical. In a way, this is kind of him rehearsing for what he would be doing later in his life. He would later confide to Philip Carlo that he enjoyed these acts and that he did it to see how the animals reacted and that it gave him a feeling of power. But most chillingly, I think he admitted, quote, that it was practice for the indiscriminate killing of human beings. He cleared neighborhoods. He literally cleared his neighborhood of stray animals. Like this is corroborated by people who lived. Like everybody knew he was the one doing it, but also like, I guess it's the 30s and 40s and strays or animals are maybe looked at differently. Nobody did anything about it. They knew it was him and he literally cleared all of them. So like, I don't understand like what the thought process of the adults are at that time. But again, beatings are normal. Like, I don't know, man. It was a different time, I guess. Unsurprisingly, Richard also didn't really play with the other kids. He didn't really even try to escape his horrifying home life. He began to lean into the darkness that really was starting to sprout up in this 10-year-old boy. And by the time he turned 11, he had already kind of become something most people never really are, a predator. Like a full-on predator that was sharpening his instincts to kill. 11 years old. He had killed and wiped out the town's stray animals by murdering them all. And he is huge. By 13 years old, he's almost 6 feet tall, and he's like 200 some odd pounds.
He must have the reputation around town of like a fucking junkyard dog, like the one from Sandlot.
Everybody avoided him. Everybody avoided him. You are dead on. Like, correct. And if that wasn't enough.
That's fucking nuts, bro.
Like, all at this point, like, he had honed his skill by killing animals all this time. Really, it seemed like all he needed now was just, like many serial killers, just kind of needed a reason to accidentally kill somebody to finally have the experience of killing somebody. Like we look at like John Wayne Gacy with the accidental, like, oh, I was just defending myself because he came at me with a knife when in reality he was cooking him breakfast in the morning, like shit like that. Sure. Any accidental reason. And that reason to test his kind of new predatory instincts arrived just a few years later, embodied in a neighborhood bully named Charlie Lane. Charlie Lane was just a few years older, a foot taller, and much stockier than Richard was. And this guy was the ringleader of a gang of what Richard called the Project Boys, who made Richard's life miserable after Kuklinski's family moved to a federally subsidized housing project at New Jersey Avenue and 15th Street. Like
Project Boys.
That's what he called them. Yeah, it's just like, cause it's that slang of like government housing, the projects, fucking.
Yeah, no,
yeah, that shit. Like this new apartment though, for Richard was actually a step up. It was clean, modern, but the grounds that became a kind of new torment for Richard, because these boys led by Charlie Lane didn't just tease him about his appearance, his tattered clothes, his kind of gangly thinness at the time. And particularly, they would constantly mock his Polish heritage, calling him a dumb Polak and locked brain. They also physically beat on him, pushing him, slapping him, throwing his baseball cap on the ground. Typical bully behavior. And Charlie Lane in particular seemed to derive the most kind of joy from making his life miserable. This wasn't just teasing, as Philip Corso goes on to describe it. He kind of called it ritualized abuse. And Richard, while still frail and a loner at this time, endured the torment daily. He didn't fight back yet. He was still just focusing his violence on animals. But one Saturday, after a particularly severe beating by two Irish brothers who lived on the block, this is totally separate from Charlie Lane's crew of people, just two other neighbors, Richard got beat up by them and ran home. When he went into the door, there stood his father, who had quietly been watching the incident from their second-story window. And instead of comforting Richard, he beat Richard and called him a coward, as is just like calling him things like a chicken shit, all this other stuff. And when he was done beating him, he demanded that Richard go back down the stairs and outside and go fight them. And so he did. He was confused. His face was like, all
the fuck are you talking about? He did. All right. Okay.
Yeah, he went outside and the boys were completely caught off guard. And now Richard is like ashamed, angry, beaten, and kind of he described
like actual mad. Yeah.
Yeah. Like truly a pent up hostility. He caught the brothers off guard and actually laid in on both of them, like some good hits. But before the fight really picked up much further, just as Richard got a few hits off, the boy's father, who was also apparently watching, a tall Irishman by the name of O'Brien, came out and then roughly pushed Richard off of his boys. And what happened next, I think for me, like made in Richard's mind that might makes right in this way. Because what happened next was Richard's father, Stanley, leapt out of their second-story apartment window, landed squarely on his feet, stormed across the lawn up to O'Brien and said to him, "When your kids beat up my kid, you watched and did nothing. When my kid fought back, you stopped it." And then without giving O'Brien a chance to say anything, he swang at O'Brien, clocked him in the face and knocked him out in one punch in front of his own kids. Like just clocked the neighbor's father.
Did he die?
No. He just punched him once and he got knocked out. Richard wanted to like run to his father, he said, to like thank him, but also knew he'd get beaten for it because affection was forbidden. So that day, I truly think Richard learned, yeah, all right. Violence is how you get people to stop bullying you. Violence is how you get people to respect you. And this is where the violence towards animals began to kind of turn towards violence towards humans. Because it wasn't enough to quell the rage that was brewing inside him from Charlie Lane's relentless bullying, because now he saw how his father handled it. So Richard became consumed by thoughts of revenge against the bully who had been tormenting him for much longer. For days, he would sit and think about how he was going to get it and figure out a plan as to how he was going to get and beat Lane for tormenting him so much. Plans of destruction churned in his mind constantly. And the other thing I haven't mentioned is that also Richard Kuklinski was a huge fan of true crime magazines, and he read them voraciously. And he learned how certain crimes, particularly murders, were solved from these pulp magazines that he'd been filling his head with all this time. So he considered stabbing Charlie, hitting him with a wrench, or dropping a cinder block on his head from a roof, which is extremely cartoonish. But none of this felt like the right way to do things. So on one really cold Friday evening, on a night when the wind was howling through the project grounds, he called them, icy sheets covered the walkways, Richard decided tonight was the night he was going to act. He went over to his closet and removed about a 2-foot long, thick wooden dolly out of it, and used that metal pole, like a really light metallic weapon, and he slid it up his sleeves. He donned a tattered sweaters under kind of a threadbare pea coat, and he slipped the dolly up his sleeve and went out to find Charlie Lane. He was burning with anger. He positioned himself near the New Jersey Ave entrance of where his home was, and his back against the red brick wall containing the building's incinerator flue to make sure he had warmth so he could sit out in the frigid air for as long as it took for Charlie Lane to pass him by. And after what he said felt like an eternity, just as he was about to give up and go home, he saw Charlie Lane approaching. Smitty knows what's coming, dude. He knows what's about to happen.
He senses vibes very hard, trust me.
Yeah, he feels it's not going to be fun. Thank you so much to today's sponsor, Hungry Root. Listen, everyone in my house always has something going on. It's always busy season for me. It literally never stops, which is why I use Hungry Root. Hungry Root is like having your own personal shopper. They take care of weekly grocery shopping, recommend healthy groceries tailored to your taste, nutrition preferences, and health goals. They also make it easy to eat high-quality, nutritious food to achieve any diet or health goals, from anti-inflammatory to gut-friendly, gluten-free to dairy-free, high-protein, and more. If you got a whole family to feed, Hungry Root has great options for that whole family with healthy groceries like smoothies, kid snacks, sweets, ready-to-eat meals, salad kits, and even supplements. There's no high-fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, or preservatives in any of Hungry Root's food. They only source top-quality meat and seafood free of hormones and antibiotics. Listen, for me, it's about making my life as simple and least complicated as possible. If I can minimize having to go to the grocery store, having to think about everything I'm going to be eating every single night, and having to actually prep for that stuff, my brain has never been made for that. It ain't made for that. It never will be made for that, which is why this stuff is so valuable to me. They do all the grocery shopping for me. I don't have to worry about that stuff. I can just kind of make the food. That's why I love Hungry Root. So you should take advantage of this exclusive offer we've got for you. For a limited time, get 40% off of your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Yeah, you heard me, for life. Go to hungryroot.com/chill, use code chill. That's hungryroot.com/chill, code chill, and get that 40% off of your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/chill, code chill. Thank you to Hungry Root for sponsoring today's episode. So Richard said his stomach tightened. He could feel his heart begin to race. And just as Charlie passed, Richard stepped out, and Lane said probably the worst thing he could have possibly said to him at this moment. What the fuck do you want, Polak?
Oh my God, dude.
Richard just stayed dead silent, his gaze cold, I imagine hateful, and Lane threatened him. Get the fuck out of my way, or I'll give you another beating, you fucking dumb Polak. Oh, God, you're just like an asshole, just asshole kid.
What year is this again?
19, so he was born in 35. He's right after World War II, 1947, 48-ish.
Yeah, no, yeah. No, I keep thinking this is the America a lot of people want to go back to. Anyway, let's move on. I don't want to make this about that.
No, we beat racism. Richard, breaking his cold silence, simply said, yeah, try. And so Charlie lunged, but Richard, without hesitating, just swung the wooden dolly that was hidden up his sleeve with all his might, cracking Charlie square on the side of the head just above the ear. And shocked, Charlie Lane held his head and backed up, his eyes not only angry but clearly surprised. And Richard, filled with a combination of both fear and pent-up animosity, went after Charlie and struck him on the head again, knocking him down. This point, it wasn't a fight. It was a brutal, relentless beating. All that stored up rage Richard harbored, a world of it came pouring out as he struck the prone boy with all of his strength. He didn't want to kill him, though. At least that's what he says. He just wanted to teach him a lesson. But he didn't stop beating him until Lane was motionless. And even then, he kicked him, cursing and crying at him with rage, demanding to get up and fight. But Charlie didn't move. And Richard, for a moment, said he felt a pulse in his neck, a trick that he learned from the true crime magazines. And when he reached to check for a pulse, he felt nothing. He had beaten him to death.
God damn, dude.
His first kill, I think we're like 14, 13 years old, somewhere around there.
What the fuck?
Now, Richard said he was stunned, realizing Charlie Lane was in fact dead, killed by his own hand, and his mind reeled. But the important bit that both caught him by surprise was that it wasn't reeling with remorse for what he'd done, but the implication of what getting caught would mean. and he would be sent to prison. And because of what he read in the magazines, he dreaded what he called the big house. He didn't want to go to jail. And there was nobody he could tell. So he thought and he planned. He knew he had to get rid of the body, and he remembered a stolen dark blue Pontiac that he had stashed in a lot on 16th Street that he'd stole a while back, a car that he'd found with keys in it and had taken for joyrides from time to time. So he ran off, hurrying to go get the freaking car, drove back to the entrance of the housing unit, and took Charlie's body and threw it into the car. But even as heavy as it was, Richard managed to drag him, and using the slippery ice to advantage, he heaved him up into the trunk. And in the trunk, he noticed a battered tool that Stanley often kept in his cars. It was like a hatchet and a hammer. So with those tools in mind, but not ready to use them, he drove off onto Pulaski Skyway, heading south, with a plan forming as a new feeling of power and omnipotence began to sweep over him. He was proud of what he's about to do because he knew how not to get caught. He was glad that he'd killed Charlie. He had fantasized about it for so long, and now having done it, he liked how it made him feel. Quote, "I will never, ever allow anybody to fucking abuse me again." Those were his words. And, I mean, I guess kind of to his credit, he never did. After driving for about 2 hours.
To his credit, he kept his word.
Yeah, I guess, you know.
And on whose word did he kill this kid?
What do you mean?
His own word. He did it because he didn't like him.
Because he was being bullied. This is the guy who was calling him a dumb Pollock all the time and beating him up, all this other stuff.
He got in trouble for this?
No. He knew he wasn't going to get in trouble. He did it.
He's the first thought he had after he killed him was, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get in the police. I have to get rid of the body.
So we know for sure that he did this?
Yes, but only years later, as you'll discover here, what the town, after about 2 hours of driving with the Charlie Lane's body in the trunk, his mind was going over what he'd do. He reached the desolate marshlands and pine forests of South Jersey. He pulled over on a small bridge above a frozen pond surrounded by tall, blonde-colored reeds visible in the car's headlights, and getting Charlie out of the trunk, he laid him on the frozen ground. Now, remembering what he'd learned from the true crime magazines about how investigators identified remains, he remembered the tools that were in the trunk, so he used the hammer side of the tool to knock out all of Charlie's teeth, and then, with the hatchet on the other side, the blade part of the other side, he chopped off the fingertips of each of Lane's fingers. He gathered the teeth and the fingertips into a cloth, planning to discard them in different places on his way back to Jersey City to further confound any investigation. And after ensuring Lane had no ID, he took some paper money from him and dumped the body off the small bridge, where it broke through the ice and disappeared into the murky waters below. And as he drove back, he got rid of the teeth and fingertips, knowing birds and animals would eventually consume them. And that's exactly what happened, because they were never found. The fingertips and teeth were never found. To him, his very first murder was a perfect crime. And for a very long time, he was right. Charlie Lane simply vanished. There were rumors and suspicions, but no charges, no witnesses, no body. And to Richard, this just validated him. He had not only taken control of something that was out of control, being beaten and bullied, but spun it into something he had total control of, and nothing bad happened to him. He did the worst possible act that he had read about over and over, and not only did he get away with it, but he felt he did it better than anyone else that he had read about. And the boys who used to mock him now kept their distance, crossing the street if they saw him coming, avoiding him entirely. While they weren't sure.
Did he put the word out?
Yeah, did everyone just no?
So while nobody, that's the thing. While nobody said anything outright, at least the boys, the gang that was bothering him and everybody knew Richard was the one that kind of killed animals. And also everybody knew Richard's family was hyper violent. Nothing.
And then this dude just vanished and they were like, Richard killed that guy.
Basically is how they treated it. How did they treated him was like, they kind of knew it was him, but they didn't say anything. And Richard.
So really, he got what he wanted.
He got exactly what he wanted. And he didn't smile or brag about it. He just moved through them like he now owned them. He had learned a very simple but brutal rule. If you hurt the right person in the right way, the rest take notice.
It's like a punch the tough guy in jail first day kind of vibe.
Yeah, except the horrifying serial killer.
Except it's on the street and it's
15-year-old kid version.
No, I get it.
And then from then on, if Richard wanted something, he didn't even ask. He just fucking took it. He became a very big thief. And in the ensuing days, he systematically sought out and, using a length of 2x4 he found, beat mercilessly every single boy in that little group who had ever bullied or abused him ever.
Jesus.
Didn't kill them, just beat the fuck out of them. It was then explained that for him, that he truly learned it was better to give than receive. His own quote about the violence. Beat up the biggest, the strongest person, just exactly like you said. All right.
Yeah.
Any jokes, Alex? You got anything for us?
Hey, yes. I'm going to read you a random joke from r/jokes. If this is from Bareback Mountain as the user.
What?
If 12 is a dozen
Pardon?
and 13 is a baker's dozen, then 11 must be a DoorDash dozen.
All right, first off, I get it. Second off, let's not ever use DoorDash again. Third off, let's jump back into the misery.
So at this point, we're looking at late teens. Well, he's like 16 or so years old. And I want you to understand how big Richard is at 16 now. He had shot up in height to nearly 6'5" at 16 and had packed on significant, solid muscle, becoming a broad, like just heavy dude with unusually long arms that made most people just kind of think twice before initiating any trouble with this guy. And he intimidated adults and kids alike. It wasn't just his intimidating size, obviously, but just the distinct way people talked about how he carried it. A quiet, unnerving stillness, almost like a palpable sense of coiled anger, just ready to be let out at any moment. But he carried it naturally with a cat-like gait, walking on the balls of his feet, which allowed him to move with a dead silence. This dude, nearly 6'5", knew how to move without being heard. Now, I walk on the balls of my feet. Are you boys traumatized enough where you have to silently walk on the balls of your feet to not disturb anything?
Am I traumatized enough to walk on the balls of my feet? I know what you mean. I live upstairs in an apartment.
Yeah.
I do understand this. There used to be a man under me who would blow a bugle at us from downstairs and hit the floor of.
No, really, dude? That's hilarious.
Dude, he was crazy. He used to watch us from his window shirtless, and he'd pull the blinds down, and then one day our downstairs neighbor just had to sock him in the face. It was crazy. It was crazy.
It
was this guy.
Can we just do an episode on that guy?
No, it's not worth it.
That's a hard no.
Not worth it. Guy's a piece of shit.
The reason I bring this up is because I imagine the reason he does this is because he had to walk around a house where any perceived infraction or being in the way got him beat. So moving without being noticed became extremely necessary. And I only bring that up. I didn't get beat in my house, but I had a mother who was wildly suicidal and having to walk around to check on her without her knowing I'm coming. So she couldn't lock the doors or any of that stuff. Moving around the house without creaking a board. You learn very quickly that walking on the balls of your feet and then distributing your weight, really no matter how big you are, as long as you can literally nobody can hear you coming. And I scare people all the time because that's how I walk naturally now. And it's really annoying to people that I
You Batman with people constantly?
Yeah, I don't mean to. It's not, but yeah, he uses it to serial kill. It's a different problem. But so 6'5",
just goes to show you.
Yeah, exactly, Smitty, dude.
He uses it to serial kill.
Yeah, he does serial killing.
Just goes to show you, the same tools in different hands, man.
Trauma does different things. But also, Richard, we'll talk about it more maybe in next episode, but Richard also does have the thing where he doesn't feel fear. I forget what the actual...
legit?
Yeah, the legit psychological problem of he doesn't feel fear. He's not really one of the things he talks about in the interviews, if you go listen to them, is how he would like when he killed animals too. A lot of the reason he did it was to see if he felt something, and he never did. And he found it weird that he never felt anything. He was a true psychopath, sociopath in the worst ways, because he did find control and excitement over it. But if we're looking at him from a serial killer perspective, it wasn't the body he was after. Like, much like Tommy Pitera, you remember, he very much didn't really like the body afterward. He cut it up, put them in suitcases, buried them in like national parks. This was very similar for Kuklinski, where he didn't really want the body, but it was like, he loved, as you'll see, as he gets into the Mafia, he really loved doing a good job.
Just like being clean.
Like, he loved being told how good he was at this. He loved like doing it, being excellent at it, and then being told, wow, man, you're so good at this. Like, almost like a kid seeking affirmation for doing, like, being seen. Like, he learned that the one thing he could do was quietly and very, very meticulously kill people. And he was able to turn that into a tool that also earned him money and a life, and also people that not only respected him, but told him that he was doing a good job.
Here's the thing. That sounds great to me also right now. Just
right. If you take that and put it into the context of any normal job, you know, like, you figure out what you're good at, like, exactly. But it's all, like,
there's also some neuroses there of the idea that like, I need, like, please tell me I'm doing good.
Absolutely.
Even, like, you don't have that thing in you that's like, no, you did fine. I get it.
Yeah.
Trust
and he
me,
also
I get it.
And he also had brain damage from being beaten in the head and knocked out by his father at the age of 5 and up. You know, like, he's not completely right up there. But again, by 16, this dude is 6'5". He's like 250 pounds, and nobody fucks with him. He walked around with a wild confidence, and he moved silently. His capacity for violence was not just like a matter of sudden hot-tempered outbursts either. It became like a calculated, deliberate system that he was meticulously building, characterized in my mind by an unnerving emotional vacancy that we just talked about. Richard himself, in later interviews with Philip Carlo, would articulate like that he felt nothing inside for any of the people he killed. When he asked, like, do you feel anything, like regret or anything? He's like, no, I feel literally nothing. Quote, nothing. They had it coming and I did it. The only people I ever had any kind of real feelings for were my family. Jesus. Those others, nothing. Sometimes I wonder why I'm like this. Feel nothing inside. I wish someone could tell me. I'm curious. And if you go listen to the interviews, he's just very deadpan. And he's like, unlike Gacy or Ted Bundy, or for instance, where all of them, they have this just like almost theatrical, like narcissistic love of hearing themselves tell their stories. I still think Richard Kuklinski likes to hear himself talk, but there's none of that theatrics behind it. There's none of that like smirking and laughing and like really enjoying it or whatever.
Because he doesn't want to get caught. The other ones kind of love the idea of people seeing their work. And this dude clearly doesn't want that.
He does like hearing good job, though, right? He does like,
when he got, I mean, obviously he got arrested, right? Because the interview's happening in jail. We'll talk about that at the end of the series. But for years, he never talked because he was loyal. And he only started talking when he thought, I think, he was in the clear, that he wouldn't get in trouble for it anymore. But that's the last bit of the series. The fact that, like I said, he was just like, he was curious as to why he felt nothing. It's all because of the fucking issues with his own mental illness and his own brain damage, I'm sure. But the curiosity for him, it just wasn't rooted in remorse, just a cold, detached observation of his own psyche. And that was kind of chilling. His ability to watch someone die and then calmly go home, like make a fucking sandwich, utterly untroubled by nightmares or guilt, just a profound sense of internal peace and quiet. And that detachment would later extend to his terrifying threats against his own future family with Barbara Pederici. He would, in no uncertain terms, inform their own children that they would have that if he ever accidentally killed his mom, their mom, that he would be forced to murder them as well, just to eliminate any witnesses. And he didn't say this as a threat or like in points of anger, just as points of like conversation of like, man, if it happened, because he beat his mother.
Just so you know. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just a stark rule for them. Like if he ever accidentally killed their mom by beating her, they would have to be killed too. Just like That's fine. And then from that point on, you are never mentally the same. You're permanent. You're broken.
You live in a different world forever now. Yeah.
And his younger siblings, from Stanley and Anna's tumultuous marriage, Roberta and Joseph were also part of his early life during this period. So he did eventually have 2 younger siblings after his older brother was beaten to death. Now, Roberta largely managed to stay out of his increasingly violent orbit, but Joseph, even as a young kid, was already displaying clear and disturbing signs of antisocial personality and profound instability, his younger brother. And he was also quick to violence, known to punch out teachers, and possessed a very clear budding psychopathy that would honestly, tragically culminate in his own horrific crimes years later that we will talk about later in the series. But just so you know, he did end up having 2 younger siblings at this point. Richard, for his own part, had kind of developed his own deep loathing for his mom. Obviously,
you said he's how old right now? 15, 16?
16, 17, right around there. At this point, he viewed his mother as nothing more than an unkempt, slovenly hypocrite, like something that solidified after he walked in on her having sex with a married neighbor on their living room couch in broad daylight. That were like at 16. This Catholic mom, by the way, going to church.
I was about to say, so he has that, like, my mom spent her childhood beating into me to be holier than thou, and she never was, so, yeah, that wouldn't mess him up at all.
And then he walked into her just fucking the married neighbor. Obviously, his visits to her became increasingly infrequent. He did, however, retain enough residual protectiveness, maybe dominance is a better word, to confront his father, Stanley. Now, learning that Stanley was still physically abusing Anna at this time, Richard, at this point, a very formidable young man, found his father and pressed a .38 caliber revolver to Stanley's head, pulled back the hammer, and simply warned him through clenched teeth that if he ever went near Anna, his mom, or the family again, he would kill him and dump his body in the river.
What the fuck is this Shakespearean shit going on right now?
Stanley undoubtedly recognized the fucking threat in his son's eyes, never touched Anna again. And for many years, Richard would not speak to his father, though that deep-seated regret for not having killed him that day lingered with him for the rest of his life, so much so that it gets brought up in interviews and in books.
It's like a serious version of Hot Run.
I don't know the reference.
That's all right.
It's all right.
It's Ian McShane.
I know the name.
That's right.
You're just digging a deeper hole.
Yeah, man. I don't know why you try. Like, I appreciate the attempts though, because every once in a while,
you never know.
Richard, meanwhile, had basically long since abandoned his education. He dropped out of school. His severe dyslexia made like just reading torturous because he just get hit for not being able to read, and just not worth it for him. And the brutal environment of the Catholic school in particular, with its physically abusive priests and nuns, was no sanctuary for this man, no support there. So deeming it a complete waste of his time, and I don't know, in a weird way, in his particular instance, I kind of understand that aspect a little bit. He began to frequent what any 16-year-old kid would frequent at this time, the smoke-filled, dimly lit pool halls and bars equipped with pool tables in Jersey City and Hoboken.
Just like the preachers warned us about.
Yeah, exactly. And the game of pool, with its, like, I guess, like, I'm trying to figure out, he became phenomenal at pool. Like, and I truly think, like, the requirement of having, like, precision and control and structure of this game is kind of what
like got into it from a conceptual standpoint. Yeah,
like, maybe he was, like, drawn to, like, I don't know, maybe just, like, having to know the perfect angle, inherent strategy.
I can empathize with that, yeah.
Yeah. And he literally spent hours every single day honing his skills, playing pool, his hand-eye coordination, the need to correct a stroke or make difficult shots. And keep in mind, his tall frame and his build gave him really gangly arms, like I mentioned earlier, which was also a pretty big advantage in pool. That's something I didn't think about until I read about it in the book, which allowed him to kind of like lean into and execute challenging shots easier than other people are not built like him. So he also learned that pool could be a great source of income, and once he was good enough, began to hustle games aggressively. And keep in mind, he's drinking beer. Like, he's playing with adults. He's drinking and smoking. Well, they all know he's a kid at this time. And he just starts hustling the fuck out of people in all these bars. And when opponents refused to pay up or, in Richard's eyes, showed disrespect, he responded with the same brutal force that kind of he learned to wield on the streets, readily using his heavy pool cue as just an improvised weapon to beat them with until they paid up.
What the fuck is this fucking comic book ass story?
Do you remember
like from
Tommy
Sin City,
Pitera
dude.
and Tommy Pitera's upbringing being a cartoon of him going to like becoming a huge kid who beat everybody up that people knew to stay away from, but then he got picked up by a karate guy and went to like go learn karate and shit.
Yes.
Like,
this guy's the pool guy.
This is all happening. Keep in mind, this is all happening in the same time frame, and Tommy Karate is kind of growing up a state over. He's not far away.
Don't make a fucking SKCU. Yeah.
There's an SKCU here, man. There is. I'm telling you.
Don't make the SKCU right now for episode 300.
It's too late. It's happening. It's an SKCU.
If you want to describe the real world as the serial killer cinematic universe, that's kind of like punk, that's kind of punk rock.
It's also kind of true.
Oh shit.
In a particular example that is often talked about, he was playing pool for cash at a bar in Hoboken called Danny's Bar. Very original. His opponent was an off-duty police officer named none other than Doyle.
Oh, I thought you were going to say
if it was O'Doyle, we would have it.
No, it is O'Doyle. I'm sorry, it is O'Doyle. It's not just O'Doyle. All
right, well, thank God. Because otherwise, that's not nearly Irish enough.
It really is O'Doyle? O'Doyle rules?
Well, what's that?
O'Doyle rules.
Alex.
Never mind.
Let it go.
I don't know what that is.
Let it go, man.
Okay, so I was going to say yes and just pretend I knew what you're talking about, but I don't know.
Yeah, just be like, oh yeah, from that movie, right? And you'd be right.
From that entertainment property.
You haven't seen Billy Madison, really?
Oh, when I was a kid once.
Okay, all right.
My dad really likes
it. I'll take that.
But that's
I've only seen We're Back at Dinosaur Story a handful of times.
You what?
You know? Don't worry about it.
We're Back at Dinosaurs. Is that the cartoon? I think.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I'm just trying to provide levity to a very dark story. You see?
Oh yeah, can we get back to the really funny story of where
come on.
16-year-old boy is drunk, drinking with a off-duty cop in this bar. The cop knows he's a kid.
O'Doyle.
And he's hustling him, and the cop became increasingly more drunk and more belligerent as he lost game after fucking game after game. And then he started spewing insults at Richard, called Richard a cheater, made derogatory comments at his background, obviously being a racist. And Richard, just being calculating and cold, didn't engage in a verbal confrontation. He just quietly kept hustling him for his money. And after it was all done and he refused to pay, he simply just put down his pool cue, quietly exited the bar, and went to wait as the cop stayed behind and continued to drink. A couple hours later, when O'Doyle was passed out, drunk in his car, having stumbled his way back, Richard returned. In that time, he had procured himself a quart of gasoline from a nearby station.
Dude, what the fuck?
No.
He calmly,
are you serious?
And quietly walked up and poured the gasoline through the open car door, because he was passed out drunk, onto O'Doyle and watching as he got soaked impassively before eventually he stepped back, struck a match, tossed it at him, and he caught fire.
Fuck off.
The vehicle instantly became engulfed in flames, and Richard just stood back quietly watching long enough to hear Doyle's screams and smell the roasting flesh of his person before he decided to turn away, walk home, satisfied for a job well done. And true. That is 100% actually true.
He's like a villain in Punisher.
Yeah, legit.
Like when they confuse the two, and he's like, "I'm not that guy."
Yeah, you're like, yeah, Frank Castle fucking lights him on fire. It was at this period again. The cop couldn't even if he didn't burn the cop alive, the cop was fucking drinking with this 16-year-old kid. He couldn't like arrest him and take him in for like, drinking illegally or anything because he was participating in all of this. It was around this time as well that Richard actually acquired his first firearm, where he purchased his 38 caliber revolver with a long 6-inch barrel from a pool hall acquaintance. And after he got it, he began to carry it constantly. Not for protection, at least he would say, but because it made him feel prepared, balanced, and grounded, and cool. Which is what I hear out here in Texas all the goddamn time.
I just like knowing I have the ability to wipe someone off the face of the earth.
Yeah, exactly.
At any given time.
When Richard Kuklinski is going to break into your house.
Grounded is such a crazy way to be like, yeah, having the ability to take someone's life really grounds me.
I rest easy knowing that at any given point I could blow someone to kingdom come with no notice.
yeah. That's truly, it's like that makes him feel comfortable. Before long, as he continues to hustle the pool halls, he has a gun on him now. He's got 2 kills under his belt at this age. He soon began to fall in with a crew that he would become friends with.
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
The misfits and outcasts, predominantly blue-collared youths from similarly violent households and impoverished backgrounds, all of whom shared a profound disdain for fucking rules, and they didn't really...
The No Rules Gang.
Themselves. Yeah, the No Rules Gang. They did have a gang name, though, and we're going to get there. This group consisted of 5 core members, 3 of them Polish, including Richard, 1 Irish, and 1 Italian. And they christened themselves with an actual gang name. This was you're Richard Kuklinski, you're a gang of 5.
What year is this again?
1948 and 9-ish, somewhere around there.
All right, so this is 40s gang name.
Yeah. What are you going to call your little gang of 5? Of like 5 late teenager ne'er-do-wells?
The Justice League.
Love it.
The Revenginators.
Oh, that's like a 90s name.
That's like the first draft. That's like the first draft of the Avengers right there.
Yeah, hold on. It's 1940s?
Yeah, 49.
The Beach Boys, but they're thinking of Omaha Beach. You know what I mean?
And because they're gonna beach OS.
Beats, yeah, they
the Beach Boys because they're gonna beach OS.
Yeah, beach. No, it's surprisingly a little more poetic than that. The gang they called themselves were Coming Up Roses.
The fuck are we doing with our lives that these gangs are naming themselves Coming Up Roses like a fucking hardcore band? Like, what the fuck? That blows my, that is like an anachronism. That is like,
you want to know why they called themselves? Can you imagine why?
Because they're all everything comes up roses. It all works out for them. It's coming up roses.
Way around, actually. The reason they embraced it was more of like a nod to their outlook on their own life, that all of them would eventually be buried by one. Like they'd have to all be buried because they would eventually die because of their life of crime. They'd end up being killed. They'll have to bury each other. So pushing up roses, I think, is like the play they're trying to do. Was Coming Up Roses a term of like, I know it's a term of like everything's coming up roses is good now. When did that originate? It had to have been
these guys. They did it.
Yeah,
they changed the world when they made this game.
Let's find out what origin of Coming Up Roses phrase. Let's see.
The craze sweeping the nation.
I think the Coming Up Roses phrase
isn't until 1959. So that saying isn't even around yet.
So they invented this.
Just saying. The trailblazers. Guys, we discovered this right now.
Maybe kind of invented it. Yeah, there you go. And to mark their bond to each other, each member had a crude tattoo that got inked onto the palm of their left hand. And if you were the Coming Up Roses gang, what would your gang symbol be?
A fucking rose.
Yeah, like a rose, but above a grave, like a grave with a rose on it.
Yeah, that's good.
No, it's a parchment scroll bearing the words "Coming Up Roses."
Well, they didn't have.
That's
Adobe
not outside. That's like inside the box thinking is what that is.
Yeah.
They didn't even go A to B and go like, let's put a picture of a rose. They were like, let's put a picture of something that says "Coming Up Roses." That's crazy.
Yeah, when you think about it, it's really not that great.
What is our logo? It's a sign that says the name of our gang on it.
I love it.
Picture of a sign.
I love it, bro. Oh, everybody be so fucking scared. And to them, this was a sign of not only unwavering loyalty, but if anyone dared to mess with one member, they would end up as fertilizer.
Another letter on the scroll.
No, they get to become fertilizer for actual roses, dude.
Now, admittedly, that would be cool if their whole bit was that they buried bodies in rose gardens. Like, okay, but that's not what they're doing.
Well, they're not murdering. The gang doesn't murder, at least.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if they were out there burying bodies and it was we buried him in the rose garden. It was like he's coming up.
That's
roses.
Scarier, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's cool in a dark, creepy way. But again, that's more like
you're a creative mind, Jesse. You're a creative mind. These are not.
Whenever you start to see murders where people are buried in roses, you now know.
That was Jesse.
When I leave a rose at the crime scene.
Oh shit! He's also a master thief. Mm-hmm. You guys want another joke to lighten the mood?
Yeah, please do.
This one is from Our Jokes, random one from Pay the Devil. I'm gonna read this one like Rodney Dangerfield. I masturbated so good last night that when I woke up this morning, my dick was in the kitchen making me breakfast.
That is very 1948 coded, so I get
true,
it.
Yeah.
I'm just picking these at random, you guys. I'm just picking these at random.
Yeah, man.
So now they got all this tattooed on their freaking hands. Not in a reference to how much they'd murder other people, but that they would all eventually die. They all swore an oath of allegiance and then quickly escalated their activities. Now, instead of randomly robbing people and hustling them down in the streets and stuff, they were meticulously planning and executing robberies of liquor stores and warehouses, burglarizing homes in more affluent areas like the Jersey City Heights and Lincoln Park, occasionally hijacking trucks. Richard, with his, obviously imposing physique and cult decisiveness, was the undisputed muscle of all of this, though his cautious nature and careful planning also kind of made him the brains behind many of them. Essentially became the de facto leader for everybody here. A second, more detailed account of Richard's lethal encounter with that Irish cop, O'Doyle, kind of talks it really gets at the perceived disrespect. I think Richard really resonates, it makes him angry. It's that respect. And I mentioned that because what we're about to walk into and how this all plays out is really difficult to understand unless you see things in that respect is really the only thing Richard wants. Nothing else matters to him. Just keep that thought in mind. I know it kind of comes out of nowhere, but where we're about to move into, I think kind of requires it. Now, as they were kind of robbing people and starting to rob stores and expanding their operations, they started getting a little bit braver with those that they were going to start hitting. And what ended up happening is they may have hit a mafia group at one point to rob them. In their early successes, kind of hitting small-time rackets, they weren't destined for longevity. They were not making enough money. But their downfall would end up being because of two of the members, John Wheeler and Jack Dabrowski, acting independently and without Richard's knowledge or consent, decided that they were going to rob a mob-run card game in Hoboken.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, this was season 1, episode 4 of Punisher.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, Alex, not kidding. This little group of 5, they had things going pretty well, but 2 of them got pretty cocky. They didn't run it by Richard or any other gangs. They got word of a mob card game that was happening in Hoboken and thought they could handle it. They obviously underestimated the dangerous territory.
How did they live through this? Yeah.
Just watch. Yeah. This is where that thought I put in your mind. Keep that in mind for what's about to happen. So this game was under the protection of a soldier in the powerful Divacavalcante family, crime family. Now, during the robbery, despite their bandana disguises, someone at the game recognized John Wheeler.
John Wheeler?
Oh, fucking get out of here, man. Word of the transgressions reached the Divacavalcante family hierarchy with incredible speed.
This is before Batman stopped them, I assume.
Yes, this is much before Batman got there.
Hey, man, you ever think what would happen if we ran into Batman? Nah, Batman doesn't worry me. He's probably not even real.
Cavalcantes.
A man by the name of Albert Parenti, who was a mid-level soldier in the Cavalcante family. He was described as a barrel-chested, weasel-faced man, and so bow-legged he walked as if he just dismounted a horse, apparently. Sought out Richard as he was the one to kind of be sent on to deal with what just happened. And everybody kind of knew Richard was in charge of the Coming Up Roses gang. And in the quiet corner of a Hoboken bar, he found Richard. And the bar was called Phil's. It's just like this Danny's, there's Phil's. It's just just a man's name for a bar at this time. Parenti didn't mince words. He walked up to Richard and simply said, hey, let me get this here for somebody to read. Oh, it's a big one. Here we go. Who wants to be a mobster?
I'll read that shit. I'll read that bullshit.
Alex is already doing the mobster voice.
I'll read that bullshit. I know 2 of you guys stuck up my game on Washington Street. I also know you had nothing to do with it, or I wouldn't be talking nice to you right now. But this is a courtesy. We all know you're a stand-up guy. We hear good things. That's why I'm talking to you like this. Those guys of yours, they gotta go. There ain't no other way.
And Richard, kind of just understanding the deadly seriousness of the De Cavalcante's justice system, he didn't attempt to deny his crew's involvement, nor did he beg for their lives. He did, however, try to negotiate an alternative, saying, first, let me say I appreciate you talking to me like this, Albert. I had no idea about any of this. I'm real sorry. I'll make sure every fucking penny is paid back. They'll leave town. They'll disappear. They'll never come back. That was his attempt at bargaining. And Parenti remained unmoved because it wasn't about that. And this next quote is also going to be for you, Alex. It's you are this man.
I am this man.
You are the man.
This man.
I am this man.
You are a bow-legged man that walks as though you just got off of a horse.
How did you know? It's not about the money, Richard. It's the principle. Look, let me cut to the chase. These guys gotta go. And you gotta do it. They're your responsibility. You do it. Or we do it. Gabish?
And all he said back to him was, capiche.
K.
And
lol, K.
Okay.
yeah, that's it. Yeah. And he made sure it got done. Literally that day, I believe. First, he located Jack Dabrowski. Without warning, without saying a word, he simply walked up to him and shot him in the head, ensuring Dabrowski just didn't see it happening at all. He left him there where he fell, and next he immediately tracked down John Wheeler. As he was leaving his girlfriend's apartment, he found him, and another just single bullet to the head without any warning ended Wheeler's life. 4 people dead. He's 16 or 17.
Fucking Christ.
His
and it's
actions
like
were
movie bloodbath shit. It's not like
oh yeah,
private murder shit. It's like he fucking lit a man on fire, dude.
Now, yeah, exactly. They were quick, quiet, executed with just resolve. And he goes on to say that he didn't feel that he felt a sense of loss having 2 of really the only friends he ever had. This is the only thing he really had as a friend. But he then simply said in the interview, it was them or me. And that was the only justification that he offered, with little solace. The other 2 members of the Coming Up Roses were not targeted, and they had reportedly descended into heroin addiction after all of this. And Richard, who held drug users in kind of a contempt, he did not like you drug users at all. He just reviewed them as weak and unreliable, had just cut them off and distanced himself from them. So he just didn't even bother. And with that,
like, you guys used to be cool murderers. Now you guys are losers.
Hey, they never murdered anybody. Thank you so much to Hero Forge for sponsoring today's episode. I don't know, you guys have heard me talk about Hero Forge, right? If you don't know, if it's your first time, you didn't know this about me, I'm an enormous nerd, like huge tabletop RPGs, all that kind of stuff. And I have 2 at-home games of tabletop RPG stuff going on here, plus one that I do online for a show. So to say that I need minis often is an understatement. And that's why I've been using Hero Forge for years. Well before we even started working with them, I've used Hero Forge. And right now, one of the big things they got going on is a sale, a big spring sale that ends on May 26th. With the sale, you're going to get up to 10% off on physical miniatures, which includes basic plastic, premium plastic, color printed plastic, color standees, 2X color statuettes, and bronze. You can also get up to 25% off on digital products, like if you have a 3D printer, STL file, or the 3D digital. None of this includes the Pro and Pro Plus subscriptions, like digital credits or gift cards either, just so you know. But I'm just telling you, if you're a tabletop RPG nerd, go check it out. Like, just go check it out before you even buy anything, because you can make your model on their website for free. Just like make it before you buy anything, so you can know what it's going to look like. And there are so many options for the different kinds of things you can make for your minis. If you're DM like me, you can make so many different encounters. If you're a player, you can make your character exactly the way you want them to be, so you have a nice physical representation of what they are. Just go check them out. HeroForge.com. Use code CHILL on checkout. Go check out their sale. You're going to get physical miniatures that are up to 10% off, and you can save up to 25% off on STL files and digital miniatures on HeroForge.com. Thank you again to HeroForge. Use code CHILL on checkout. HeroForge.com. The Coming Up Roses gang, with that, it's misguided oaths and weird tattoo situation, literally dissolved within days. And more significantly, Richard had demonstrated his unwavering ability to handle a difficult problem without complaint, to follow orders explicitly, and to execute them in a ruthless efficiency. And the De Cavalcantes and other organized crime family figures took careful note. Richard Kuklinsky had just passed a kind of audition with these guys without even realizing it. He walks through a doorway at this point into the violent world of the Mafia. They would observe him, test his discretion further, before really entrusting him with more significant assignments. But for the time being, the Jersey police found no witnesses and no viable leads in the murders of John Wheeler and Jack Dabrowski. They quickly became just two more forgotten casualties of street violence. And Richard's entry into the fringes of organized crime didn't mean he ceased killing for his own more personal reasons either. Shortly after dispatching Wheeler and Dabrowski, he took another life, an act that is entirely disconnected from any mob directive whatsoever, which is where we talk about again, I think he's a fucking serial killer too. During one of his solitary excursions to Manhattan, he'd often take the ferry across the Hudson, finding a strange solace in the anonymity of the city. He encountered a homeless man there under the dark, dank, and desolate West Side Highway, and the area with its decaying piers at the time and really shadowy recesses was already becoming a landscape that Richard was getting familiar with. And when this unfortunate man approached Richard and belligerently demanded money, Kuklinski didn't hesitate for even a second. He immediately grabbed the man, and before he could react, Richard plunged his hunting knife into his chest with two swift, strong, powerful thrusts. There was no prolonged confrontation, no panic, just a quick, silent, brutal stabbing and killing. He later described this as a test for himself, an experiment to see how it felt to kill a complete stranger, someone that was completely disconnected from his own life, because up to this point, everybody that he had killed in his mind directly or deserved it for some reason, whether it was like because they went off and the mafia told them to, they were bullies, etc. There was no financial gain, no external order involved. And after he collapsed, Richard left the scene immediately, but they then came back later to the same spot to see that the body hadn't been moved or anything. He was still just dead there. And he just wanted to look at it again and engage his reaction, to see how he felt looking at the body, because he felt nothing when he killed him. And when he came back and looked at the body, he then also said he felt nothing. So killing a stranger was,
man, that's crazy shit.
As impactful to him as killing anybody else. And it was around this period that a kind of distinctive and chilling habit began to manifest, one that we'll play in an interview clip next episode. It was a faint, kind of like quiet clicking noise that Richard would make out of the left side of his mouth whenever he was starting to get really agitated and wanting to hurt somebody, and usually precluded a murderous act or a very severe beating if you were his family. And it literally just sounds like when he's talking, he's like, as he's like talking, and he just keeps making that noise. And during an interview on one of the one of the documentaries, the interviewer was asking, trying to press him for more details, and he doesn't want to give them, and he starts making that noise. And if you were aware of it, you know what it means. He wants to fucking hurt the guy. So, and those who became close to him in the following years, that would become his mafia life, particularly his second wife, Barbara, and his children, would learn to recognize and dread this subtle sound as the precursor to the rages of his, either homicidal moods or just straight violent ones. The murder of that homeless man kind of was just like moving the overture, like the window to a new, more sinister phase of his development. The west side of Manhattan, especially the dark kind of corners beneath the elevated highway, kind of turned into his personal laboratory and hunting ground. Now, I want to say it up here that he claims and that he's killed upwards of close to 200 people.
No way, dude.
I don't think that number is accurate. However, we do know that Tommy Pitera killed likely 60 or 70 people. The number likely even higher than that. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is at least at the number that Tommy Pitera was, if not higher, because as far as we know from Tommy Pitera, like he had his serial, but he didn't go out and like just stab people to see what would happen and like how he like tested himself. But this guy, did. So I fully believe this man probably killed a lot of people. He just didn't bury them in a graveyard of evidence like Pitera did, where people could dig up body after body after body after body. The west side of Manhattan, like I said, kind of just became his hunting ground. He would often just kind of roam these areas specifically to find victims for his quote unquote experiments. He obviously targeted the vulnerable, the homeless, the mentally ill, those isolated and alone, individuals he chillingly referred to as practice people. He fully knew, like, killing these people, the cops wouldn't care. They wouldn't want to deal with it. It'd be like too much work. The lesser dead, as we've called them many, many times. For him, these were mere variables in his equation in a way. People's whose disappearance would likely just never go unnoticed or unreported entirely. And of course, he didn't limit himself to stabbing either. He began to kind of just like experiment in horrifying ways of killing people just out of curiosity. Things like shooting them, strangling them, bludgeoning them with pipes, using ropes, wire, even a common screwdriver as a lethal weapon. And he would study, like to a meticulous degree, the effects of each technique, observing his victim's reaction with the same detached curiosity they had shown when torturing the small animals when he was a kid. If one method proved too quick, too loud, or drew unwanted attention, it was summarily discarded from his tool belt, essentially. He wasn't merely killing. He was systematically building his own effective toolkit of murder, one quote unquote experiment at a time. And these experiments would, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, pay off when he's really got involved with the Mafia and they wanted very specific kinds of kills from him. And this awful trial and error of murder, he developed preferences. He liked certain ways more than others. A knife plunged into the base of the skull and thrust upwards into the brain, he discovered, was both silent and instantly incapacitating. A precise aimed bullet, either just above the ear or under the jaw, was equally effective and final. An ice pick, easily concealable, proved also just as deadly as when driven through the eye socket or into the ear canal. He was methodically determining what caused the most immediate collapse, what resulted in the least amount of mess, and what was least likely to draw the attention of passerby or authorities. He wasn't necessarily like improvising as much as he was just perfecting his craft. What he saw. So
was he good at it?
Oh yeah, he was very.
I don't
good.
like how you said that. Oh yeah,
yeah, like not like he is one of the most profound mafia killers in existence for a reason. Like he is known and he has 1 million documentaries about him for a reason. And of course, Hollywood had to try and make a weird ass, like sympathetic movie showing him as a family man when he just threatened his family that he would have to kill them if he accidentally killed their mom. Like that's where I was. Again, movie is garbage. Don't watch it. So yeah, these gratuitous killings were just practice, curiosity, maybe just like, maybe he's just bored sometimes. Bodies would continue to turn up, unidentified men, stabbed, shot, strangled. Their remains were often abandoned under bridges or hastily concealed between dumpsters. It's also important to know that he never would go out of his way. He went out of his way never to kill a woman or a child. That was also like his weird principle. He only would kill men. So, I mean, like, I guess call it a principle, whatever you want to call it. But the police, often dealing with victims from transient populations, regularly failed to connect these deaths in any way. To them, these appeared to be isolated incidents of bad luck, drug overdoses, violent squabbles, among others, city vagrants. No one really suspected that a single methodical predator was running around doing different kinds of murder in different ways to see how it goes. Because another thing about serial killers is they typically have their favorite way to do things. Gacy quickly learned his rope trick. Bundy would take his victims into the woods, tie them to a tree, and, torture them for days. This guy wasn't interested in finding a ritualistic way in killing people. He was just coldly curious about how different ways of killing people affected them, and you saw them as tools. So he was acutely kind of just aware, and he was obviously very acutely aware and in tune with this lack of scrutiny from the police, and immediately just constantly exploited it. These tests were not just about refining his methods for him. It was just making sure he perfected his craft. And as Richard honed his lethal skills on these poor fucking victims of Manhattan, he also mastered the art of compartmentalizing his existence with a weird, traumatically chilling precision. Like, by day, he could maintain a convincing enough facade of normalcy. He would hold down odd jobs, adhere to somewhat regular hours, even participating in mundane neighborhood activities from time to time. No one who encountered him in these kind of contexts would have really suspected that he was the quiet, unassuming serial killer that was killing all these people. They may have suspected he was violent, like all that other stuff, which I feel like was kind of a regular thing for back then, but no one really suspected him of being quite what he was. And the ability for him to seamlessly transition between that hidden life and his outward presented life of normalcy became one of his more formidable weapons as well. We also see this in serial killers. Again, Bundy, Gacy, everybody. He was fucking Gacy with the KFC. It's a joke in our fucking community, right? Like, he was able to live these two lives and hide it from everybody. For him, he said that there was really no internal struggle between the two, no warring dual identities or anything like that. That these were not two competing personas, which is a little different than the way Bundy or everybody else kind of phrases it. But just he kind of looked at it as different facets of just him, of the same person. They're just coexisting without friction or internal conflict, which I think is even scarier because it's a weird way of him embracing this. So he's not shying away with it. Again, other serial killers, Dahmer, the only way he could kill the people that he would murder was he had to get fucking blackout drunk before he would actually strangle these people. Like, they all had their ways of like getting into the mindset. For him, in a weird meditative way, he looked at it and he integrated it into himself and was like, this heinous part of me, I'm not going to heal it. That's who I am. And he just accepted it. And that kind of made him scarier because he wasn't trying to hide from it. It left little room for fuck ups. And it was during this period of just constant escalating freelance, quote unquote, violence and his constant cultivation of compartmentalization of his life that his personal world was on this cusp of yet another significant, but ultimately tragic turn as he was about to meet Barbara Peterici, the woman who would become his second wife and the mother to 3 of his children. Now, at this point, his double life was already well in motion. Before Richard was fully embedded in the world of contract killing professionally, he did, like many serial killers, attempt to build a sort of normal whole life, though all of these attempts were deeply scarred by his own violence and control over the family he had to need to have. His first significant dip into domesticity began around the age of 16, as we've been talking about, when he started living with a woman named Linda, a woman that was 9 years older than he was. They resided together in Jersey City, kind of presented this facade of a regular couple to the outside world. But of course, behind closed doors, Richard's violent nature was already very apparent. When Linda became pregnant, Richard, who had no genuine affection for her and did not want the fucking kid, demanded that she had an abortion. She refused. And in an effort to do it himself, he punched her in the stomach as hard as he could. But the pregnancy continued, and their first child, a son they named Richard Jr., survived.
Dude, that is so dark. Why is he named Richard Jr.?
Yeah, shit, dude. Yeah, he got like, God, hey, son, I love you now, but I tried to murder you when you were still in your mom's stomach by punching her.
Dude,
honestly, it has a little bit of like
bummer, dude.
Like there's a little projection there.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah,
just a little bit, just like a tiny,
just a tiny little bit. And despite his home violence and lack of love for Linda, Kuklinski married her at City Hall anyway, later claiming that he did it for the kids' sake. And their relationship did not improve.
Did she have like good moments with him?
If there were, they don't get talked about.
Wow.
Yeah, the relation never improved. Richard controlled fucking everything. He just came and went as he pleased. His behavior was just volatile and unpredictable. If Linda ever complained, he would do what he learned through his family. He just physically beat the fuck out of her. Linda eventually had a second son with him named David. And this turbulent chapter with Linda would come to a very decisive end quickly after that, after Richard discovered that she was with another man named Sammy James. Fucking love that name. At the Hudson Hotel. And so Richard beat James wildly bad. Huh?
Never mind. Okay, I think we're going to get into it. You said he beat James, and I thought
yeah. I'm sorry. I was taking a moment because I was just very, very badly in a feud of rage and mutilated Linda by cutting off her nipples.
Whoa!
Didn't kill her though. He didn't cross that line like you said he would never.
Fuck, man.
Later they got divorced. A great time.
I
no
get that.
shit.
A great time, Alex, for a breather.
A little breather. You want one?
Yeah. We're almost at the end of the episode. We're almost there.
Okay, a man goes to the doctor and he says, man, this has to be the smallest doctor's office I've ever been in. And the doctor says, get out of here, man. I'm taking a shit.
Where did that one come from?
That's from our jokes.
Awesome. Thank you, Reddit. Sometime after his relationship with Linda, that's when Richard met Barbara Pederici. She was 18. She was an 18-year-old Italian-American working at the Swiftline Trucking Company when Richard encountered her. He was immediately infatuated, seeing Barbara as kind of like a departure from the woman he had previously known, and he pursued her intensely. And despite warnings from her boss about Richard and not doing it, and the initial disapproval of her own family, she did it anyway. Fuck it. Love can't be stopped, baby. And they began their relationship. And this relationship was obviously immediately tainted by Richard's possessiveness and brutality. And when Barbara expressed a desire for, hey, maybe I need a little space, he stabbed her in the back with a hunting knife as a warning and threatened to kill her entire family if she ever left him. Not killing her, though.
Well, that's romantic.
That
man.
That's like, I
love
get
you so
it.
much. I want to kill your family. You can't leave. I need you.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. And so what else? Then Barbara basically is now trapped. What the fuck else are you going to do? This poor woman is goddamn trapped in this situation where, and here's the thing is, like, he would do it. Like, he is one of the ones that truly, like, it's more than a threat. He would actually go through with the whole goddamn thing. I guarantee it. So soon after, Barbara became pregnant. She fled, terrified at that point, to her father in Miami. She just couldn't take it. After she got pregnant, she was too scared. But Richard was relentless and eventually tracked her down. And after Barbara's mother, Genevieve, provided Richard with money to finalize his divorce from Linda, Richard and Barbara were married in a simple ceremony at Miami's City Hall. He found her, and then their own parents paid off his divorce, and then they got married. Good God. And of course, the fucking cycle of violence continued with fucking Barbara. She suffered a miscarriage after Richard, in a fit of rage, forced her to sit on a metal stool all night. They returned to New Jersey after getting married in Miami, where Barbara would endure constant abuse and lose 2 more babies. One of those miscarriages directly followed a severe beating from Richard. So again, the movie is shit. The movie is a lie. The movie is a lie. The 2012 movie is garbage. Despite this domestic backdrop, Richard and Barbara eventually did have 3 children who survived. Their firstborn daughter, Merrick, born in March of 1964, followed by another daughter, Chris, and later a son, Dwayne. And again, much to everybody else on the outside of all this, Richard continued to try and cultivate the image of a dedicated family man. He took his kids shopping and showered them with toys and groceries. However, to his children and with Barbara, he was obviously just a figure of pure terror, a monster. Infamously, he told his eldest daughter that he also warned this family that he would kill them all. If his mom died, the kids have to die too. And he maintained a rule of never physically striking the children that he had with Barbara, but the psychological torment was fucking constant instead.
I mean, this man just said, I'll kill you. Like, yeah, I get it.
His moods constantly shift from in an instant from cracking a joke to just explosive, violent rage, smashing furniture, terrorizing the entire household. And the children learned to recognize that dreaded clicking sound that he made from the side of his mouth, the tick that often accompanied his violent intent. And Barbara did attempt to leave him once, but Richard found her again, dragged her back, and then beat her into submission. And from that point on, she and the children remained trapped. Behind the facade of their suburban home, Richard Kuklinski was now the provider and the predator all in one. And by the time he was in his early 20s, his ability to just withstand cold, deliberate violence was just well established. His actions were just calculated decisions carried out with an eerie, like, this is my job mood. And when the author of the book that I used, Philip Corlow, asked him what he felt during these acts, much like his response to everything else, he said, nothing. Nothing. He claimed he felt no guilt, no pleasure, none of it. He was just totally detached, which made him an ideal candidate for the brutal world of organized crime. And it was around this period that his efficient murder capabilities caught the attention of none other than Carmine Genovese, not the infamous New York crime boss, but a soldier for the DeCavalcante family in New Jersey, nicknamed Meatball, because his head looked like a meatball.
Well, I mean, yeah, dude.
Okay. All right. We're back in it. We're back in cartoon land again.
Welcome back.
We're out of the worst cable television show you ever heard and back into cartoon comedy.
Yeah, now it's Dick Tracy, dude.
Yeah, word had reached Meatball about some Polish enforcer who didn't flinch and executed tasks with zero hesitation. So one afternoon, Carmine invited Richard and the leftovers of the last remaining heroin addicts of the Coming Up Roses crew that he was once a part of to his Hoboken home. And this wasn't like a dimly lit backroom meeting. This was like a Jersey style traditional lunch, as meat sauce and sausage fried. Carmine had some casual conversation. They had some cheap red wine, slid this like your typical, what you would expect in a movie sure. Of these mafia.
Don't you call that wine cheap in front of him though?
I would never.
He'll start ticking.
As they were having casual conversation in a cliche way, Carmine slid across the table a grainy black and white photograph, and the photo showed a man that was stepping into a black Lincoln. All Carmine said to him was, this guy right here in Lincoln Park, he's a problem. He's got to go. That was it. The instructions were clear. That was all he got told. The hit had to be clean, fast, and silent. Success was really the only matter. So reunited with his old gang, the crew staked out the target's house, observing for routines, trying to figure out when the best time to hit him would be. And when the opportune moment arrived, one of the gang members that was with him, who was supposed to carry out the hit, froze instead. He was pointing the gun at him and he just was unable to pull the trigger. All he was able to say is I can't do it. I can't do it. So Richard very calmly took the .32 revolver from him, stating very simply, I'll do it. And he executed the mark with a single shot to the back of the head. And the next day, he actually returned to Carmine's house, and Carmine was surprised to see them because he didn't think it'd be a few days before he got the hit. They did it in under 24 hours. And when he came back, there was already a newspaper like headline about the murder. And when he showed them the newspaper, because he was confused, he said, you sons of bitches, you did it. Bravo. And brought them into the house, poured them all drinks, and paid them each $500. $500 each, baby, just to kill them. And Richard, he said, and he looked to Richard and said, literally to him, you kid, you have a future. There was no formal induction, no oath, just the promise of more work would be coming his way, because goddamn, that was smooth. And the work did indeed come quickly. Carmine began assigning Richard contracts that demanded more than just simple executions. Some required bodies to vanish without a trace. Others called for the victim to endure immense suffering before death. In one kind of instance mentioned in the book, a man was taken to the Pine Barrens, tied to a tree, gagged, stripped, and left to be devoured alive by rats. Richard apparently filmed the entire thing, delivered the tape to Carmine as proof, who then doubled the payment for the extraordinary suffering that was inflicted. Like, he told him he has to suffer. Kill him, he has to suffer. This shit was like an English teacher saying, I need a creative writing page, one page long, and you hand him like 20 pages, a short story. Like this, right. He didn't expect this level extra of credit. Extra professionalism. Credit, tying him into a tree, gagging him, letting rats eat him alive. Another time, to ensure a body would never be properly identified by confusing the time of death, Richard utilized a technique that he was said to have kept the victim's body in an ice cold well for nearly 2 years before he would go back and dump it. This method, basically, along like with freezing bodies, is how he earned his nickname, but we'll get to that in a future episode. Yeah. He worked cleanly, swiftly, and never, ever, ever asked questions. This was the arena where Kuklinski truly excelled. He wasn't a made man, and not being Italian, he could never formally be part of the family. I don't know how much you remember about the Tommy Pitera stuff, but being a made man is basically like what Tommy became, I think, if I remember correctly. You get the apartment, the money, infinite riches. You have people who work for you, all this stuff. But he was Polish, so he could not be part of the family officially. But he would become something even more valuable to a lot of these people. Their preferred independent contractor, the outsider who delivered results and maintained absolute silence. And as his contracts grew in complexity and his body count mounted, the distinction between his personal proclivities and his professional assignments just dissolved. The killings became his routine. He wasn't just a tool the mob could use. This man was turning into the specialist they relied upon for the most gruesome, heinous, and sensitive tasks any mob could give somebody. People disappeared, some were never found, others surfaced too late, their bodies offering no useful clues regardless, and Richard remained a ghost in these operations. He didn't linger around, he never revisited, he didn't drink or get drunk, never left a mess. He simply appeared, did what he was told to do, and then fucking vanished. And with the significant money that he was now making with the mob, because they paid him and he loved it, and it was like the most money ever made from just one job, he would eventually buy himself a Lincoln. He would wear tailored suits and continued to play a part of that ordinary blue-collar New Jersey family man, taking his children shopping and bringing home groceries. But underneath it all, he was the murderer for the fucking mob. And those who paid him obviously knew precisely who he was, and to avoid him if you didn't need to deal with him. And soon that reputation brought him into contact with one of the most violent figures in Mafia history, Roy DeMeo.
Oh shit.
DeMeo, a soldier in the Gambino crime family, operated a notoriously brutal crew out of the Gemini Lounge in Brooklyn. He was intelligent, exceedingly dangerous, and like Kuklinski, had a penchant for kind of just building up a body rack, like just a lot of dead bodies behind him. Their meeting wasn't like a matter of chance either, but just kind of inevitable with the path that he was on. And DeMeo wasn't concerned that Kuklinski wasn't Italian either. What he valued was Kuklinski's unflinching ability to do what others would not do or could not do. And they would eventually form an alliance that marked a huge escalation for Kuklinski, because he was no longer just the freelancer for a New Jersey family. He was stepping into what he called the major leagues of organized crime, about to collaborate with one of the most violent crews the American mob had ever produced. And that's when we'll pick up in part 2, with Kuklinski now firmly in the orbit of Roy DeMeo in the formidable Gambino network. And what came next was far more structured, far more prolific, and far more disturbing than anything we talked about in this episode. Because now he's not an outsider. He's becoming essential.
No wonder they made a movie about it, though. It's like fascinating in like a character growth way.
Yep. And this is the area where he would technically become brush paths with Tommy Pitera. This is where going into DeMeo and going into New York and all that stuff, where Pitera is working with the mob, who is part of the family, who did work with the Gambino crime family, even though he was working with begins with the B. I can't remember it. This is where the universe... Bonino. Yeah, I think that's correct. But yeah, this is where the universe comes together.
No, I think it is.
Bonano family. The Bonano family.
Bonino, something like that.
But this is where like the universe cross paths because they're active at the same time. And this is the New England mob. So you got 2 serial killers kind of actively working for it. But again, that's what we'll pick up next week. That's the end of episode 1 for Richard Kuklinski, the Iceman. We're back in the mob world, baby. The mob world in the serial killer world, married together again.
There you go.
Hey, boys, feeling? You want to take us out on a joke, Alex? A nice breath of fresh air?
Sure. You know what? Just to wipe that clean. Hey, what would you call Pac-Man if he owned a chocolate factory? Ready? Willy Wonka 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 Wonka.
Solid dad joke. I'm here for this. Yeah, I like
shout
that
out to our jokes.
That's good.
Oh, God. All right. Thank you guys for supporting us. We'll be back next week with another episode. We're going to do minisode over at patreon.com/Chilluminati. We appreciate you. We love you.
Bye.
Thank you for 300 episodes. Goodbye. Anyway, me and my wife were sitting outside indulging on our porch one night, enjoying ourselves. I needed to go to the bathroom, so I stepped back inside, and after a few moments, I hear my wife go, "Holy shit, get out here." So I quickly dash back outside, and she's looking up at the sky in awe. I look up too, and there's a perfect line of dozen lights traveling across the sky.